in the chat where you are. Also do like a Q&A as well. Right, it seems to be Facebook's the issue. Okay. If you put in the chat where you're in, what country you're in, whether you're a business owner and all the other jazz, and put what industry you're in. Just because knowing what business and what industry you're in has a massive difference. We were talking about this yesterday, and I'll sort of go down the rabbit hole a little bit with this. The world is very big. And you're watching something like YouTube, Facebook, and you're trying to work out what to do and how to do things, you've got to make sure that the advice that you is relevant into your actual business. I have no idea what that symbol was meant to be, by the way. That's fucking weird. Because if your business isn't as relative as what you're learning, you should even stick around. Behind this, which if you follow, actually makes a dramatic difference. By the way, if you're here, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's not been working very well today, so my apologies if you had a delay. So we want to look into what are these main areas and what are the structures that we're actually putting into. So let's imagine, for example, what are we trying to do at this stage here? Well, this stage here is our appointment. And with our appointment section, we've got to make a few assumptions. Now, this might not always be as valid for you personally, but let's just sort of go down the rabbit hole. So if we're talking about appointments, and then you've got, we'll call it the sales call, whether that's face-to-face, phone, Zoom, whatever it'll be. And you've got the appointment. There's variables inside of all of this, which you've also got to think about. Some people will have this where they have had no contact before. Some people might be doing it as a triage. Some people might have it from a paid ad. Some people might have it organically. So not all appointments are going to be the same. The context behind it all matters. And whether they've come in and they've got no context into who you are, whether you're trying to do it as a triage call, whether it's come from a paid ad, or if it's come from organic, the approach you've got to have into this is all going to vary. But the goal should be, by the time we get to this stage here, that the sales call process should be pretty much the same. The variables that actually come into this are going to be in this section far more. And you want to almost make sure that when they filter through to this little doorway here, but by the time they come through here and come out the other side, that they are all completely aligned in the same way. So, what industry are you in, John? If you're here on TikTok, if you're here on Instagram, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, you've got to think about what you're actually trying to achieve in these stages. Let's imagine for the moment we go organic. There's also variables around this. So you might be at a stage that you're doing cold calling. You might be at the stage that it's coming from social media. These are both organic, but one's going to be more inbound and one's based on more outbound. And an outbound conversation that leads into the appointment is going to be very different from something that might have come from social media. But now we can go down the rabbit hole more. In the social media side, you might have someone that just has seen one video, booked a call. They might have seen one long form video and booked a call. They might have been watching loads of reels for 6 months. All of these are going to be a variable on how strong this actually comes through. And the way that we approach the conversation is going to make a massive difference. It is vital to make sure that you are not treating all of these areas exactly the same. And there's actually things that you can put into place to understand it. And the problem is, most business owners and most salespeople are assuming that when people come through to the stage where you're trying to set an appointment with them, that all of these are exactly the same. And they're completely and utterly different. There's going to be a level of knowledge or awareness these people actually have around you, around your product, and around your service. So it's vitally important to understand, but the way you're structuring everything from your point, sure that all of the hard work that's going on here is clearly laid out, and then the stepping stone through to the next stage of the sales call is clear, concise, and everyone understands what's on the next step. Because for the majority of people, what they're trying to do is they're trying to rush this stage, thinking if I just get people to hear, they will buy. And this is why you end up with so many people that say, I want to think about it. They bring up issues around budget. They want to talk about their partner. Because this stage was so rushed, but then you've got to this stage that they're at the point where they're thinking about things and you're trying to get them to make a buying decision. So it's really important to understand, if you press the button and you got into people's, into your prospects' shoes, into their life, to understand exactly where they are at that point and exactly what needs to happen to move that through to the next stage. Because if you can't work that out, if you can't understand, if you can't assess it, it's going to make it harder for you. You cannot just go into things blindly assuming that just because this person's now sat in front of me, that they're automatically going to want to buy. Now, there might be a few other areas. It might be that logically, you are a good fit. industry, you might be a good fit. You might have worked with their competition, so you know that you're a good fit. But for them, you just seem like someone who's completely new to them, which reduces the level of flow and increases the level of resistance, because no one likes to be told what to do. And the problem is, for the vast majority of us, we're getting caught up in this loop where just because logically we can help industry and we've helped their competition, but we should be a slam dunk for people to automatically work with us. And it's just not the case. Some of us need to get far more exposure. I can't, unfortunately, buddy, because so in the coming weeks, you'll see a big difference. But if you're listening along, you should be able to hear what we're talking about, and I'll explain it on the boards anyway. So we want to really be thinking about at the moment, just because logically you're a good fit, because industry-wise you're a good fit, just because you've helped their competition, it doesn't mean they are going to buy. That means that you know you are qualified for them, but it does mean that they have qualified for you. So you might look at them and be like, this person is a perfect fit for maybe down to price point, maybe previous success, all makes a big difference. But just because they are qualified to you does not mean that you are qualified to them. Just because you feel that you can help them doesn't mean that they feel that you're a good fit for them. So what we've got to make sure is that when we're in this stage and when we're in this process, that we're doing things in a way that's actually going to move us forward in the process of selling. So, how are we going to do that? So there's a couple of ways. And one of the first ways that you can get into this in a better way is to actually understand what they think and what they feel right now. And want to remember these three areas, MFB. So your myths, your fears, and beliefs. Now, I'll give you a prime example. Let's imagine that you've got a kid and your kid is 5 and they tell you that they are scared of the dark. You saying, don't be scared of the dark, there's no monsters under the bed, might be a logical thing to say, but it doesn't mean that they're going to believe it, because they have a belief that monsters are real. They have a fear about, even though the myth might be that they are safe at night under the bed, blah, 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 doesn't move it forward. What we need to be able to do is have context and understanding and explanation of what they think, what they feel, and where they're at. And for the vast majority of people out there, when you're talking about your product and service, they also have myths, fears, and beliefs that they have built up over time that they need to address. And I'll give you a prime example. Let's say that my uncle is an absolute divbat, but he's really articulate and he makes a really good argument. We've all had those types of people in our life, and they're really convincing around their point. And what they've ended up doing is, over time, they have helped us to build up a series of beliefs. And because they were very clear and they were articulate and it made logical sense, we brought into these beliefs and we actually made these beliefs our own. And all of us now are walking around with beliefs that we don't know where they came from. We just know that we hold them as beliefs. And for someone to buy and go from being a prospect to being a client, something has to happen here, and it has to be a change. And they need to have a change around something, around either their myths, their fears, their beliefs. Maybe they need to have a perspective shift. Maybe they need to have a knowledge shift. Maybe they need to have an understanding shift. But something has to happen. Oh, my apps are kicking in now, trying to kick me off. Something has to happen for people to get to that stage of making a decision. Is you automatically are going in with logic. Don't be scared of the monsters under the bed. They're not real. Instead of going into actually rewiring and helping people understand. Right. Sorry, TikTok. I've got this app called Opal, and it shuts off my apps to stop me overusing them. But then I forget to turn it off before I get on here. So just because you tell someone a logical thing and they agree with it, if they've got ingrained beliefs, fears, and myths around an industry, a product, or a service, that will conflict with what you're telling them. And this leaves them saying, I need to think about it. They're going to want to speak to their partner because they're not confident and their confidence is low. They're going to look for other options that are out there because you're telling them something now which logically makes sense, but their beliefs or their misconceptions or their fears or whatever that is still holding true. And some people have held certain beliefs in their life for years, and they've always known it to be true. Now, if you've got to give them a new perspective, some new knowledge or new understanding, only once that's happened are they going to get to that stage. Now, you just standing there and telling them that they're wrong doesn't help. You just saying what you're telling me now doesn't make sense. And you saying, does this make sense? And they say yes. It doesn't mean that they're going to buy your product or your service. Because actually, logically, it might make sense. So how are we going to get this to move forward? Well, there's a number of things that happen. You can start talking more in stories. You can start using analogies. And you can ask better questions. Because all three of these are going to make a dramatic difference. Because if I say, hey, you're wrong, I'm right, that's going to increase resistance, and it's going to reduce flow. And we want it to be the other way around. We want to increase flow and we want to reduce resistance. So instead of me just saying, you're wrong, let me tell you the right way, what we want to make sure that we're doing is utilizing our time with that person to ask better questions or explain things through a way that's going to make sense to them. And if you can explain a story, instead of it ends up being me and you talking directly and me talking to you about my product, it ends up being me and you talking about someone else and that product. And if we can get to the stage that we're telling more stories, it paints a picture in people's minds. And the more that we can paint pictures in people's minds, the more that helps us to change their perspectives around their current fears, their current beliefs, and even realign them on myths that they might have around an industry. And until people understand this, it means it's harder for you to move forward. Because you might logically be helping people, but you need to articulate it in a way that when you got your little person They need to have a change happen in their head, and their brain has to be rewired around their fears, their beliefs, and their misconceptions that they might have around your product, your service, or in your industry. If this is making sense, by the way, please do let me know. So it's actually less about whether your product is good or bad. Most of us out there know there are people in your industry that have a terrible product, their service isn't good, whatever it might be, and they're outselling you by a country mile. But here's the big thing you've got. If they're good at storytelling, if they're utilizing analogies and they're asking better questions, it's going to get that person talking more. It's going to get them to understand more. And the better someone has a perspective and an understanding, it's easier. Now, there's other benefits. Tell someone a story or an analogy. These things here are easy because they relay that to others. Ignore my writing. And if someone can explain something, let me turn it this way. Look. The joys of being live. Right. Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm sorry. Do you know what I ended up doing? I ended up knocking you off and unplugging your camera. Try and turn this around. I don't even know if you can flip this while it's live. Okay. So let's do this. Right, so you can be able to see that a little bit better. Now let's change this one round. I've got about 20 minutes. Hello, stick with me. Let's turn this one around as well. So we're in a new setup at the moment, so we're still putting a lot of this stuff together. So you guys have to sort of bear with, and things will get better in time. Okay, we're sort of there. Right. Okay, right, so we're back. Right, so in short, what ended up happening now, I completely screwed up. I tried to change one camera, knocked into that, and knocked you guys off as well. The joys of liveness. So let's get back into this. So if you can start selling through stories and analogies, what that's going to enable you to be able to do is have things that are relatable truths to other people. If I explain to you now how a light switch works in a very you might struggle to relay that conversation. But if I can explain it through a story or an analogy that would give people a thought in their mind that they can relay, it means they feel like they know it. And someone feels like they know it more, they are far easier to make a decision because they're going to have a level of comfort that is increased, which is also then going to do the opposite here, and it's going to go off and it's going to lower the level of resistance and it's going to increase the level of flow because inside of their head, it now makes sense. And the reason people don't buy your product or service is not for the fact that they don't want to. The problem that we have for the vast majority of this is they've got so many ingrained beliefs, hurdles, and problems that they hear all this and they have a logical agreement, but emotionally, there's something that just doesn't fit right. So then they tell you they need more time. They need to speak to their partner. They want to, whatever it'll be, think about it. And that's because they're trying to bridge this gap to make a buying decision to buy your product. But because logically it's emotionally it's not, it messes with their mind. People are not enjoying telling you anything. The occasional person is a bit weird, but typically they're not. The vast majority of people are getting on a call because they want help. But if you are trying to make people make a decision that goes against their current fears, their current beliefs, and you haven't dismissed their myths through effective selling to make a buying decision that they're confident and happy with. Because in their head, they're going, yeah, you make sense, but I believed X. Go back to the scared of being monsters under the bed. A kid might well be like, yeah, no, that makes sense, monsters. But then they lay in the bed and they're like, yeah, but I feel a certain way. I think a certain thing. And they've got a fear that overrides it. They have a belief that contradicts you. And they have believed into some degree of a myth that's just not true, but they've sold themselves on that idea. Until you've dismissed the fears, the beliefs, and the myths, and you've given people a new perspective, it is almost impossible for them to move forward with what you're trying to do. So, if in your life at the moment you are struggling to get more appointments, deals, you have to recognize that the problem you've got is most people are coming into the phone call, coming into the appointment, coming into the sales pitch, holding on to the fears, sometimes misconceptions, beliefs, and they need to let go of these to move forward to getting you to buying your product. So take the time today. Be honest with yourself. It doesn't have to be that they're right, you're wrong. You're right, they're wrong. Just put yourself out of the equation and think, what are some of the fears that people might have? Maybe some might be getting scammed, buying a product that doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Their marketing's BS. It's all lies. Whatever those fears might be, that could be a genuine fear. What is a belief that they have that they're holding on to that isn't moving them forward? What information do they have and what do they believe to be true? Is that the barrier for them buying your product or service? Because if they go home at the end of the day with a myth, a fear, a belief, a misconception, they still hold in their soul, and someone else they see that also have it, that's when you get a cancellation. Because they go, but why do you believe that? That's the problem you're going to face. Right, sorry for the cameras and the dramas. We're going to try and your potential.info. There's a video you can watch, save you than getting on a call with me straight away. And it shows you a bit more of a blueprint on how we bring all this to life so that you can actually move forward with your business. Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, good to see you. Hi. I don't remember which one this is now. We'll go to Insta. Right, see you later. See you later. Right, we're out. See you later.